Good morning, everybody. As we go to the Chitas of today, we're holding in the portion of Mishpatim. We are holding today is Thursday, so we're holding the fifth reading in that portion. We're holding on chapter 23, verse number 6. Mishpat eivenecha b'rivai. You must not pervert justice for the destitute countryman in a lawsuit. Now she says, Evyain is the root of ava, to desire. It means a person that is destitute yearns for everything good. Somebody who has nothing, so he needs something. So nevertheless, you're not allowed to bend justice to him, just because he's destitute. A person should be distance himself from falsehood. And you shouldn't execute an innocent or acquitted person. For I will not exonerate a wicked person. Now she says, you must not execute an innocent or righteous person. From where do we know that regarding one who leaves the court after being found guilty, and then someone says, I have what to argue on his favor, that we bring him back and we try him? Therefore, the Torah says you must not execute an innocent person. And this person, even though he's not righteous, for he's not been acquitted yet by the court, he nevertheless is innocent of receiving the death penalty. For you now have a possible reason to acquit him. So therefore, we always bring the person back to the court. Where do we know, if you have an innocent person, that when somebody comes and says, I have what to argue against him, that we do not bring him back to court and we try the verdict? Once he's an innocent, you don't bring him back. Torah says you must not execute a righteous person. But this person has been considered righteous, he's been redeemed by the court, and therefore you cannot come now and bring him back, double jeopardy. Now she says, what is the meaning? It's not up to you to bring him back and convict him, for I will not quit him. And if there is a judgment against him from heaven, you have nothing to worry about. I will take revenge. Even if he's released and by innocent, I have my agents in which to administrate him the proper form of death, which he is liable. Verse number 8. You should never take a bribe. For the bribery blinds the clear-sighted, and it distorts the words of the righteous. Now she says, you must not expect a bribe. I mean, why would you have to tell us that? Why do we need this? Even an intention to judge a case truthfully. That's what the pasuk means. Even if a guy tells you, here's a bribe, not that you should bribe something, you should change a judgment. I'm telling you to judge good. And therefore I'm giving you a help that you should judge good in a case truthfully, and certainly to pervert judgment. But if it were to pervert judgment, there's already prohibition to state me, you must not pervert justice. So if you're not allowed to pervert justice without money, surely you're not allowed to take a bribe to pervert justice. Yahweh Pikrim. Even a Torah scholar who takes a bribe will ultimately become confused, forget what he has learned, and his eyesight will become dim. Yisalif, unkel shatz and bekalkel distorts. Divrei tzadikim, words of the righteous, mean proper words, meaning the Torah laws of truth. And so unkel is translated to pisgamim titritzin, upright words. Beger le silchatz. You're not allowed to oppress a foreigner. You know the feeling of a foreigner. Because you were foreigners in the land of Egypt. Now she says, you must not oppress a foreigner. In many places in the Torah, cautious against mistreating a convert. Gay in general is a convert. For inclined to revert to his earliest habits, you always should give Avas Ager. Ger, you have to love double. First of all, because he's a Jew now. And number two is is as a mitzvah of a ger. It's nefesh ager. How hard is of him when people oppress him? Verse number 10. 6 years you may sow your land. Vasafta tevuasa, and gather in its crop. Vasafta, Rashi says, Vasafta is to bring in. Shvi is tishmitena. And on the 7th year, you have to leave it. And a tashta, and you leave it and withdraw from it. And then it's the needy amongst your people, eat it. So the left is least to the beast of the field. Keitasa, so you shall do the karmacha to your vineyard, ulezeisecha, and to your olive grove. What means tishbentena? What Rashi says it means you have to me'aveda, for then you have to walk away from the field. The tashta, what means withdraw from eating its produce after the time of removal, meaning when there's no longer any available in the field for the wild beast and animals to eat, you have to. You cannot eat in your house. You have to take out if you stored anything. Another explanation, you must leave it, meaning from doing full agricultural work, such as plowing and sowing, and withdraw from it, but not even to fertilize it. Leave the land alone. And the leftovers of the beasts of the field will eat. This is written to make a comparison between food of needy and the food of the beast. Just as the beast eats without tithing, so too the needy, the poor people that come into the land on Shemitah to eat from the produce, don't have to tithe it. From here, our sages derive that the law of tithing don't apply to the 7th year Shemitah. You do the same thing for your vineyard. And the beginning of the verse is speaking about the white grain of the field. As stated earlier in the verse, you may sow your land. They are loving grains or vegetables. 6 days a year of the week you work. In the 7th, Tishbais you shall rest. So that your ox and your bondsmen and your slaves and your nafesh ben amasecha, and your bondswoman, the son of your resident alien vager, and even the convert. Rashi says, what does it tell us over here? We're talking about Shabbos over here. Statements that tell us that even the 7th year, you might think the whole year is Shabbos. So what do I need to keep the Shabbos? The ganze year I'm not working. So the weekly Shabbos must not be suspended. So that we not say since the entire 7th year, it's called sabbatical year. So why do I need to have the Shabbos? The weekly Shabbos may need not be observed. And therefore the Torah tells us you have to observe. Laman yanucha shercha, granted relaxation. This phrase teaches us that the animal may gaze by plucking grass from the ground, or perhaps it means it was confined inside that. Maybe your animal, thus like you're not allowed to cut the ground on Shabbos. Maybe you're not allowed to let your animal cut the ground on Shabbos. You have to take your animal, muzzle it in your house, and not let it only eat from made food. Therefore, the Torah says you must say that not relaxation for the animal, but painful, meaning these little animals allowed to go and eat and cut the ground. You're not allowed to work the animal. Ben Amasecha, the verse here is speaking about the uncircumcised, non-Jewish bondswoman, that he's also obligated, you're not allowed to work with them on Shabbos. Vager. So over here, that's why you have to know exactly when the Torah Ger is talking about a convert, when it's talking about a foreigner is living in your country. There's different ways of learning the word ger. So that's over here. The ger over here is a foreigner. It means a non-Jew who's granted residence in the land of Israel. That the ger is called a ger toishav. A non-Jew lived in Israel, had certain obligations to live in the land of Israel. He didn't become Jewish, but he was not allowed to worship idols, etc. It's called a ger toishav. Verse 13. Everything I've told you, Tishmeru, you shall watch. And I don't want to, you should not mention names of other people's deities, nor may your mouth cause their name to be heard. Rashi says, you must be vigilant in everything that you have instructed you. This is written to apply to a prohibition to every act of commandment. For every instance, Shmira, keeping, written in Torah regarding a commandment indicates a prohibition in lieu of being written in a negative statement. So therefore, the Torah in essence says, Tishmeiru, every mitzvah that I tell you, Tishmeiru, watch it, make sure that it's protected. Make sure, as you say, the Mishnah says, to gedel a Torah, make a boundary around the Torah, protect the Torah. Leisaskiru, you must not mention it, meaning you must not say to somebody, wait for me next to such and such an idol. I'll meet you at the corner of the church. Say to me on the holiday of such and such of an idol. Another explanation, you must be vigilant in everything that I've instructed you. You must not mention the names of other people's deities. These two statements are written together to teach you that the prohibition of idol worship is equal to the severity of all other commandments together. And the merit of being scrupulous about keeping it is equal to the observance of all commandments. That's why the idol worship is one of the three cardinal sins, so to say. La yishma min agoy, you may not hear it from a non-Jew. Al picha, by your mouth, meaning you must not make a partnership with a non-Jew, for he'll swear to you by his name of his idol. So if you're going to make him to swear in the name of the idol, you're also not allowed to do that. So therefore, you have to be careful not to go into business maybe with an idol worshiper, because he's going to swear in the name of the idol because of you. Verse number 14, Shalosh Regalim Tachaygali. You should celebrate three holidays, Bashan in the year. Regalim is times. That's the word regel. Similar to that, you have struck with me 3 times. This is later on with Bilam. He hits his donkey and he says, "You have made me problems with the golem, shleish the golem." Verse number 15. It's Chag HaMatzos Tishma. You should watch the holiday of matzahs. Shivas Yomim for 7 days. Teichel matzahs, 7 days. You shall eat matzahs. Asher tzivicha, as I have commanded you. L'moed chodesh aviv, appointed time in the beginning of the grain ripening season, the spring. Kiva yatzim Mitzrayim, because Donya went out of Mitzrayim in Nisan. V'leirah panerekem, you should not appear to me empty-handed. What's chodesh ha'aviv? So Rashi says the month in which the produce becomes ripe in its shoots. Aviv is related to Av, father, meaning it's the prime and initial ripening of the fruits, produce. What does it mean you're not allowed to come empty-handed? Meaning, when it comes to see my presence, you come to the Beis Hamikdash for Yontiv, bring an offering, bring an oilah sachag. You have to bring an offering for the holiday. Verse number 16. As Chag HaKotzir, you should observe the festival of the harvest. Bikurei Ma'asecha, by offering the first produce. This is Shavuos. The first produce, such as Tizra Basada, which you labor and sow in the field. That's why the Yom Tovim are connected to the sun, so to say, because they're connected to the harvest. So Pesach is the spring, the beginning of the growth of the fruits, and Shavuos is when it starts to, the labor that it starts to produce its fruits. And the Chag HaOsiv, in the festival of ingathering, which is Sukkot. When you gather the fruit in from the field. So that's Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Chag HaKotzir, Rashi says, the time of the harvest, this is the festival of Shavuos. Bikurim Masecha, which is the time to bring the first produce, that's the Bikurim. The mitzvah of Bikurim, to bring the first fruits to the Beis Hamikdash. For the offering of 2 loaves who brought the Atzeret Shavuos would permit the new crop of that year to be used for the grain offering. It also brings the first fruits to the temple, Bikurim, and it's described in Shavuos, the Gemara, the day of the first fruits. The Chag HaOsif, the festival and gathering, this is the festival of Sukkot. When you gather your produce, throughout the summer, the produce is drying in the fields. Right? All the hay is drying in the field. Around the festival of Sukkot, it's brought into the house because after Sukkot starts the rainy season, and therefore everything is brought into the house. Verse 17, Shalosh Pam Bashana, 3 times a year. Every person, every man should appear to the Beis Hamikdash, Al Pnei Adon Hashem, before the Master of the world. Shalosh Pam Bashana. Actually, since the subject of passage of the 7th year, it is necessary to mention the commandments again to teach us here that the festivals are not displaced by that year. So even though in the 7th year you're not dealing with the fruits and anything, nevertheless, the Yontif continues. Pesach, like the Shabbos continues on the 7th year of sabbatical, so too Pesach, Sukkot, and Shavuos continue in that year. Rashi says the men folk among you, the obligation of Yedah to come to the Beis Hamikdash was on the men. Verse 18, you must not sacrifice my Passover blood, sacrifice in the presence of leavened bread. And my festival offering may not left in the altar overnight until morning. Now she says, this comes to teach us a special law concerning Pesach. And even though Pesach starts on the 14th at night, that's when Pesach starts. That's when you start your Seder. It has to be done at night. Nevertheless, when it comes to Pesach, out of all other holidays, it actually starts on the 14th by day. Because they brought the Korban Pesach on the 14th. Okay, to the Beis Hamikdash on the 14th. So they started by midday. And now that then Pesach, the laws of Pesach, even Chometz starts on the 14th, the middle of the day. Because and that's what we do today, even till today, that you're not allowed to have Chometz before midday already. You're not allowed to eat Chometz, and you have to burn your Chometz by midday, and all the laws of Pesach start midday. So you must not slaughter the Passover sacrifice the 14th of Nisan until you remove all leavened bread from your possession. So even though it's not Pesach yet officially, nevertheless, since the korban of Pesach was brought on the 14th by day, so therefore, the 14th by day already comes Pesach for many technical reasons. Well, my fat of festival offering will not left overnight off the altar. That means everything. That's why it was a very busy day in the Beis Hamikdash, the 14th. Because they had to bring all the korbanos, the thousands. That was the korban, the chag. The korban that we brought for Pesach was brought on the 14th, and it was brought a whole day from midday until the next morning. And the Messiah were busy bringing all the korbanos that people bought that came to Oil Sliya, that came to the Beis Hamikdash for Pesach. That because had to be totally consumed, brought on the Mizbeach by the end of the night. From this verse, one might think that even on the wood prior of the altar, the fat becomes invalid if left overnight. Therefore, Torah states elsewhere on the fire pile on top of the altar during the entire night. So that's why the Mizbeach was busy the entire night until the morning. Well, the Yalin may not left overnight means that it's not considered to have been left over unless it was not placed in the altar by dawn. So you had, as long as it was on the altar before the next day, it was still considered the previous day. The next day means the dawn of the next day. So if everybody brought the korbanos on the 14th, then everybody went home by night. Everybody went home to do their celebrate their Pesach Seder. But the Beis Hamikdash was busy. The Beis Hamikdash was busy a whole night, misrabli. The Kahana were busy, and I was worked over there, but the Kahana were busy making sure to bring all the sacrifice the Jews brought, to make sure that everything was on the altar by the next morning of dawn. So even though the last one was thrown on 5 seconds before dawn of the 15th of the day, if it was on the fire, it was considered okay. But the whole night you can bring it up from the floor of the courtyard to the altar, and I'm sure they were busy the whole night bringing up these karbanos. Verse 19: you must bring the first ripened fruits of your land. Tavi beis Hashem to bring it up to the house of God. You're not allowed to cook its mother. You're not allowed to eat a young animal that has been cooked in its mother's milk. Now she says the first ripened fruits of your land, the obligation to bring the first fruits bikudim, this goes back to Shavuos, applies to certain cases, even to the produce of the 7th year, and therefore the obligation was stated here too. The ripened fruits of your land. How is this selected? A person enters the field. He sees a fig that has become ripened. He ties on it a piece of reed as a sign and dedicated as bikudim. So those are the first fruit. He went out to the field. He saw a fruit being ripened. He took a string. He put a string on it. And he said, okay, this is going to be the first fruits. This is going to be my first fruits. And then later he took it off the tree and he brought it to the Beis Hamikdash. Bikudim was brought only from the 7 types of produce stated in the land, stated in the verse. I'm sorry. These are the 7 fruits that Yisrael was blessed with. Eretz, Chita, Seida, Geffen, Tainer, Niman, Eretz, Chalom. The Svashal Gedi, you're not allowed to cook a kid, a calf, and a lamb are also included in the word Gedi. For Gedi is merely a term of young animal. This may be the fact that we find several places in the Torah the word Gedi is written, and it needed to specify after its izim of goats. For example, it says, Anechi Ashala Gedi izim. I will send you a kid goat. As Gedi izim, the kid goat. Shnei Gedi izim. So you see that sometimes the pasuk says Gedi izim, a kid of goats. It doesn't say it uses so really. Rashi would say lav dafka. It says Gedi itself. If it says Gedi izim, then we know exactly what the young is talking about. Gedi is talking about in general young calf. This teaches the word Gedi alone, a calf and a lamb are also included in that meaning. So when you say Gedi, it doesn't only mean a goat. Only it says Gedi izim, then we know that the Gedi means a goat, a young goat. But when it says Gedi alone, it can mean a cow too, in the pasuk. A calf, a lamb, are also included in this meaning. The Mishnah is written in 3 places in the Torah. L'savasha Gedi, Chalev Himai, is written 3 times in the Torah. Why is it written 3 times? So one is a prohibition of eating a young animal cooked in it. That's one prohibition. You're not allowed to eating milk and meat together. One is prohibition from benefiting any pleasure from it. So even if somebody else cooked it, you by mistake you cooked milk and meat together, you now cannot give it away. You have to throw it away. You can't have any pleasure in it. And one is the prohibition of cooking to begin with. So you're not allowed to cook, you're not allowed to eat, and you're not allowed any kind of pleasure, but any concept of milk and meat together. And that completes the Chumash for today. We continue the Tanya of the day. Today is the 22nd day of Shvat, is the yahrzeit of the Rebbe's wife, and we are holding on the 26th chapter of Tanya. And the Alter Rebbe is dealing with the concept of atzvus, depression, and how a Jew deals with the concept of depression. The Alter Rebbe now goes on to discuss a different type of sadness that causes one a failing in the matters of the spirit. And a person can have a depression in the aspect of his spiritual life. And It happens. We feel unfit spiritually. Sadness connected to heavenly matters. One must seek ways, freeing himself from this. We need to free ourselves from these things that have to do with God, situations that we might have become Avedis. We've done sins, for example, whether it's now in our youth, whatever. We're dealing with issues, with guilt issues between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm not even talking about, surely not in the time when you're serving God, you're davening, you're learning. That surely you have to figure out how to let go of it right now. Because every Jew needs to serve God in joy. And a gladness of heart. You cannot serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the gladness of heart if you have atzvus. If you're sad about things between you and God, you simply cannot serve and enjoy. It doesn't work. So therefore, you have to say to yourself, now is not the time. So therefore, I gotta free myself from these issues. Even if one that is a businessman, he works the world, he's a business, he's working his day to job. He has a job, Baruch Hashem. If sadness and anxiety about heavenly matters fall within him, the time of his business, time of his work, his middle of work, his middle of doing his job. So now suddenly he feels like he's a bad person and he's terrible between him and God, this terrible situation. We have an issue in our relationship. So what do you do with it? He should realize, number one, most of us think that when we have an issue between us and God, it's because we're very holy people. And because we're holy people, we have issues with God. Comes the Alter Rebbe and says, no. You should know that it's not because of that. It's because of your Yetzer Hara. Your evil inclination simply wants to drag you down. Why does the Yetzer Hara want to drag you down? It's very simple. Yetzer Hara has one agenda. My evil inclination, my desires, whatever they want to call it. I have, because I want to go. I want to justify my reasoning of doing things that are not right. How do I justify my lifestyle? How do I justify the way I live? Is I say, you know what? I'm not holy. Very easy way to justify one's own negatives. Say, I'm not perfect. I'm not holy. I'm not perfect. So what do you expect? And then your Yetzer Hara got you. My Yetzer Hara, my animalistic soul got me at that moment. He has convinced me. He has got me in the right place, so to say. And he has basically convinced me that I don't have to do anything. I am who I am. I don't have to be better. I don't have to change. And he's right in a way. I am not a good person. I'm not going to only with the word not a good person. I'm not a perfect person. So I'm imperfect. And therefore, I can do imperfect things. Kenoida, as it is known. So it's in man's nature to seek pleasure and not to remain depressed. If his feeling of spiritual failure distresses him, he will seek his pleasure in physical gratification. That's it. The evil inclination therefore wishes that he be depressed. But even over spiritual matters, he doesn't. My animalistic soul doesn't care what I'm depressed about. My animalistic soul is happy that I'm depressed. And now, since you're depressed, let's go party. Let's do what we got to do. So later succumb to some temptation. This is the Alter Rebbe flipped over depression. and basically said the truth of what depression brings. Most of us look at depression that it brings us to not do anything. Comes out to them and says, no, depression comes you to do bad things. It's not that your depression comes and makes you do nothing. Your depression doesn't surely make you do good. And then actually, my depression makes me do negative things. Brings me down to worse situations. She'im loikein, because if that's not so, you have to say to yourself, if this is coming from something holy, from where would he genuine sadness, one that is derived from love of fear of God? Forget about in the middle of davening, in the middle of prayer, in the middle of it. What is it coming to when he's in the middle of his job? His job is in regular mundane aspects. Why would he be depressed? He's out of Torah. He's not learning Torah. I can understand when it comes to learn Torah. Okay, my animalistic soul doesn't want me to learn Torah. My animalistic soul doesn't want me to daven. My animalistic soul doesn't want me to work. Why doesn't he want me to work? My animalistic soul surely wants me to work. I'm going to have all the pleasures in the life by working. So why would my animalistic soul come to me in time of my work? Since a genuine sadness, an expression of love of God, of fear of God, it should be expressed itself at a time when these emotions are active, during prayer, Torah study, and the like, but not during one's business. Clearly, then, this sadness is artificial. It's not real. It's created by my Yetzer Hara, so that my animalistic soul, for its own purposes. And one must therefore rid himself. You just think, why am I giving in to my animalistic soul? Why? Because why would I give in to him? It's just going to create a worse situation. So therefore, Alter Rebbe is not going away from sadness, because there is sadness in life. It needs to be done correctly, as Alter Rebbe is saying. It needs to be done in the right time. And because you need to use the sadness for the sake of something, for the sake of good. We got to take the sadness and use it out for good. And the only way I can do that is when I can deal with that sad situation in the right time, when I'm ready to deal with it, to be able to any other time, there's no purpose. It's a negative purpose. In a time of prayer, it's surely a negative purpose. Time of learning, it's a negative purpose. And even in time of my day-to-day life, it's a negative purpose. There's no positive in my feeling guilt and my feeling negative at this time. One must therefore rid himself of it. Next paragraph provides the means, meaning so therefore, whenever the pressures settle upon him during the service of God, the Talmud Torah, he's learning Torah. Maybe Tefillah, he's davening, he's praying. Whether it happens to him while he's in his day-to-day life, he's working. This is what he should say. This is not the time. Now is not the time for real sadness. There is a time for sadness. There is a time for sadness. Because there are things to be sad over. So there is a time for it. Nobody's denying sadness. And nobody's denying negative things that are happening, whether it's in outside or inside. There's a time for it. Afila daigas avernus chamurim. Even if a person, God forbid, did terrible sins, there's a time, a reckoning time. There's a time I need to take care of this. But there's a time for it. It's not all the time. Because all the time is ultimately no time. A person does it all the time, basically, he's not there to fix it. It's the self-consuming, and there's no positive thing from it. And not only that, you might say to yourself, when is the time? To work on issues in life, you need to make a time for that. It needs to be a focused time. Because there are things to be sad over. There are things to be to have even maybe sadness and to cry over sins of the past or what my negative things are. There's a time for it, but you need yeshiva das. You need to have a calm mind. Lizbainin, to meditate, to reflect. B'gdulas Hashem, in the greatness of God, asher chotalei, whom you have sinned. And here's an interesting thing, I believe, that the Alter Rebbe throws in here. That the real thing of rectification is between you and God, B'gdulas Hashem. Not the sin. It's the connection between me and God. What happened truly with my negative thought, speech, or action, whatever it might be? What truly happened over here? Not that I've done something negative. What was the true ramifications of this? True ramification is not the act. Is the true ramification what the act, what happened through the act? And that is the separation between me and God. So if I don't know how great God is, so what is the separation? So what have I done already? I've done what I've done. What's the big deal? No, it's a ramification between the greatness of how great God is. If I can contemplate how great God is, then I can understand the separation that happened by this act or by this thought or whatever it might be. Because what are we trying to accomplish by this thought? What are we trying to accomplish with this meditation? I mean, by this concept of self-reflection and looking within ourselves. What are we trying to accomplish? We're trying to accomplish that we're not perfect people. That I know already. I don't have to sit and meditate that I'm not a perfect person. I don't have to sit and meditate that God is great. I'm trying to accomplish something by this concept, and that is that I should realize what happened with my act, that I separated myself from God, and by that act, I possibly need to sit and cry a little bit. What means to be separate from God? What truly means that my act or my thought or my speech created this separation between me and HaKadosh Baruch Hu? What is the true meaning behind that? B'mirirus amiti, and bitterness. So that's when comes bitterness, real bitterness. And that's why tshuva, we learned, the Alter Rebbe mentioned, tshuva is an ongoing thing. You learn in Rambam, there's many levels to tshuva. And tshuva is really, the more you contemplate and meditate and understand something, the more it creates a concept within you to the deeper connection that we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The more we go deeper into the relationship that they had with God, the more we feel the pain of the separation between us and God. And that is true bitterness. Mirirus halev, that I feel I'm separate from God. So that's why bitterness and joy can go together, because I know how my connection to God, actually, from my connection to God, I realize how far I am from godliness. And therefore we have gilu birada. We can have joy with trepidation. They don't contradict each other, because I understand how great my connection to God is. And at the same moment, I understand that there's certain things that have separated me from Him. And that separation is painful because of how close we are, how important we are to how important God is to me. If God's not important to me, so I have no concept of sadness, that I'm not, it's not important to me. So what do I have sadness of the separation? There's no importance. So first I have to realize the importance. It's a situation. This is the same situation of in any relationship. Truth is, the more I understand the importance of the relationship I have with somebody else, the more I understand that what is the separation of this? What is the damage of this relationship? Chashon, why would I even? Then you understand why everything counts in a relationship. If the relation is not so important, so why is this negative so important to the relationship? That's what we say when we have it. Oh, why is it so important? Why are you getting so angry? Why are you getting so frustrated? What's so important in this? If we have a deep relationship, then everything is important. Because we have an extremely important relationship with one another. And therefore, kakot, as the expression says, kakot and kagada, whether it's a small thing, it's a big thing. It depends how deep my relationship is with you, that there's really no difference between big and small. Because we have a deep relationship. So really, that's why if atzvus comes from just a general concept, so that's why it's a negative thing. A general depression, a general concept of feeling inadequate is no gain. We have to understand what it means to be inadequate. Inadequate, who are we inadequate to? And the more we understand that our connection is with God, so our inadequacy is not to anybody else. We shouldn't feel inadequate to any human being. Every human being should feel important in this world because there's nobody who's inadequate. Everybody is equally important to the world. There's no person in the world that has no importance to the world. That the Eibishter brought him to the world, God brought him to the world. It shows that he's important to the world. And he's not inadequate to anybody. He has no inadequacy to anybody. But to the Eibishter, to God, that's when he has said that there are certain inadequacies that I have with God. There are certain disconnections, and I have to work on those. I got to work on those disconnections that I have to God. And I got to take time to think about that. And I have to meditate on this concept. And therefore, there's got to be, as the Alter Rebbe said over here, there's got to be the clarity of mind. The mind is calm. I cannot do this in a disarray situation, in a crazy moment. I need to have calmness of mind. I have to think about this relationship. And then I have to realize that there's certain negative things in this relationship and how I'm going to fix this negativity. How I'm going to use this negativity. Some negativity I need to get rid of. Some negativities I can change. Some negativities are actually a positive. These negative things propel me to do these inconsistent. You might have to word, you don't have to use word negative even. These inconsistencies, these flaws actually create something within me. And it gives me the capability to do great things in this relationship. And therefore, it needs to be done with the calmness of the mind. You need to simply sit down and meditate on it, think about it. As explained elsewhere, when this time should be. So it surely shouldn't be in a time when you're learning, and surely shouldn't be in a time when you're davening. Surely it shouldn't be in a time of your work. It needs to be in a time where you have calm of mind. Sham is by Gamkein, and over there it's explained that what's going to happen if you do it correctly. What's going to happen if you do this correctly and you sit down and you take the time to think about these things? What's gonna, and you're gonna have the meridos, you'll have the bitterness, you'll realize, wow, what can I look at this look at this inconsistency, look at this flaw that I am, and now what do I do with it? The Alter Rebbe says if you do it correctly and you do it at appointed times, Azai Yasir Ha'etza Milibel Gamri, you'll completely remove sorrow from your heart. Because a positive thing is going to happen. V'yamim be'emunah shalem. And you'll believe with perfect faith Ki Hashem hiver chatosei v'rav l'stoyach, that the Eibishter erased his sin. God has erased your sin because you did this correctly. You understood the relationship, the flaw in the relationship. You understood the negative situation in this relationship. And you really feel Either you need to get rid of this, or you need to use it, or you need to transform it, whatever the conclusion comes to your thought process. Thus, even one who sinned repeatedly against God, God will readily forgive him as though he has sinned as he had sinned the first time. Unlike man who easily forgives his first offense, but finds it difficult to do so when the offense is repeated, the Eibishter can forgive Rav L'Sleach. Right? A person, how many times can say, I'm sorry to somebody? After a while, you got to say, I'm not interested in your sorry. I'm not interested anymore. I don't want to forgive you. I don't want to deal with you. But the Eibishter Rav L'Sleach, he has an abundance of slicha. He has unlimited amount of capability to forgive. And what's going to be the outcome? From this way of doing it this way, you're going to have great joy. You're going to come to great joy. And that's the positive thing of doing this process and doing it correctly, because you're going to come to joy. Because that has to bring to joy. That will bring to joy. Haba achar eitzav comes after the sadness. It will come to joy. In Niskaleel, as mentioned the word. So then the virtue of sadness lies in the joy which it gives rise. And that's when you have true sadness. When you have the sadness that brings you down, it doesn't bring to joy. It actually brings to more sadness. You need to use sadness to bring to joy. You have to do it. If not, it's a negative sadness, and we need to walk away from it. And that completes the Tanya of today. Today is the 22nd day of the month, which is chapter 106 to 107. The Rebbe writes in the Yom Yom of today, there are two sorts of statutes, laws. Statutes that create life and statutes that are created by life. Human law and godly law. Human laws were created by life, so they vary from land to land according to the circumstances, because the law is for the life, how to live. You want to live a happy life, you gotta follow the rules. You gotta stop by a red light. So that's the law that's created by man. For man, it's created for the concept. The Almighty Torah is a godly law that creates life. God's Torah is a Torah of truth, Torah's emes. The same in all places, all times. And that's why the Torah is eternal. Because it's a Torah's Chaim. It's a Torah that gives life. It's not created from life. It creates life. And that's why Torah Nitzchias and every mitzvah we do creates life. Because every mitzvah, let's say this, every mitzvah that we do comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the Makar HaChayim, the source of life. And that's the Yom Yom of today. My dear friends, today at 10 a.m., we're going to learn Sikh of the Rebbe, Rashi, Sikh of the Rebbe, on this week's Parsha. And I just want to say, on a sad day that it is today, we need to bring happiness through learning Torah. We believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that God is the ruler of the world, and He's going to bring us happiness through connection to Him and through our relationship with Him. And therefore, I hope everybody comes and elevates himself in the learning of Torah, Mitzvah at 10 o'clock today. You're welcome to come. Also, 7 o'clock tonight, we continue decoding the Talmud, fascinating class. Also, everybody's invited at 7 o'clock tonight. It's not on Zoom at 7 o'clock. You have to come to Chabad. I wish you all a wonderful and beautiful day. God bless us all. God bless the Jewish nation. And the Mitzvah will continue tomorrow, 8 a.m., the Chitas of the day.